Hey everybody, it's time for Hero again, chapter 17. I'm in one of my new favorite places, which is just outside. I found a beautiful little pond and my dogs are loving it, just like Hero and Scout love as well. All right, here we go, chapter 17. They were making good progress, but as they neared the top of the hill, the path abruptly narrowed to no more than 2 feet wide. The ground dropped off sharply to their left and sloped steeply upward to their right. Ben's pack brushed against the roots and branches that stuck out from the wall of earth next to him. Ben told the boys to be careful while they stepped sideways along the treacherous path. Scout and Hero yipped and howled encouragement. Soon they arrived on the bank of the creek. Although it looked more like a raging river, it was churning with debris from the hurricane. Ben and Hero stopped, and the group came to a halt behind them. Jack said quietly to the boys, so that the boys couldn't hear, "Where's the bridge?" According to the map in Ben's hand, it was supposed to be right where they were standing. Ben double-checked the coordinates on his compass. This was the spot. "That is the bridge," he said, pointing to what was left of it. Some old lumber lying across the creek, partly submerged in the water, with a bustled railing leaning off of one side, and one side only. The other side was long gone, probably miles downstream by then. The bridge bobbed up and down with the current. "Oh man," Noah exhaled. He looked nervously over his shoulder at the kids and their heavy backpacks. "How are we going to get them over that?" Ben stepped closer to the water to investigate. He put one foot on the wood and pushed down hard. It was wobbled and bounced, but it was still firmly attached to its concrete base. As long as the wood itself held out, they should be able to make it. Ben walked back to Noah and Jack, and they sighed. "Very carefully," he said. Within a few minutes, Ben, Noah, and Jack had come up with a pretty good plan for getting across, but they would have to go one at a time. Noah was first. The tether he had created with the dog's leashes was more than long enough to reach across the creek. Ben tied it tightly around Noah's waist, weaving it through Noah's belt loops. There was no way it would come off. Then Ben clipped the other end to Hero's collar. He would stay on the bank while Noah made his way slowly across the bridge. If Noah fell, Hero was strong enough to pull him back up onto the bank. "You ready?" Ben asked. Noah nodded, but didn't speak. He took the first step onto the wood. It sagged under his weight, and he grimaced. He took another step, then another. The bridge dipped and bowed as he tread across it carefully. The water ran over the tops of his boots. Ben and Jack stood on either side of Hero, their hands on the tether for backup. Ben forced himself to inhale, then exhale. Inhale, exhale. Noah took a few more steps. He gripped what was left of the railing for balance. The bridge held. Noah stepped onto the muddy ground on the other side. "Whoop," he yelled, his fist punching the air in victory. "Nice work," Ben yelled. "Go, Noah," Jack shouted. The Boy Scouts cheered in unison. Noah untied the tether from his waist and found a strong tree on the far bank. He tied that end of the leash to it. Now the boys would have something other than the railing to hold on to. "Okay, guys, line up, single file," Jack called out to them. The boys did as they were told. Jonah went first. He bit his lower lip and focused hard on putting one foot in front of the other. "Don't look down," Noah urged him from the other side. "Look at me." Jonah lifted his gaze and locked eyes with Noah. "That's right, buddy. One foot in front of the other. You got it." Jonah looked tiny under his giant backpack, his skinny arms held out to the side for balance. When he reached the middle of the bridge, he hesitated over the churning water for just a moment. Then he forged ahead. When he made it to the other side, he jumped onto Noah's arms and into Noah's arms in triumph. I'll say that again. When he made it to the other side, he jumped into Noah's arms in triumph. Emmett was next, then Isaiah. All the while, Hero stood firmly in the mud, his muscles flexed as he braced the tether with his body. Ben unhooked the tether from Hero's collar as he prepared to tie the cord around a boy named Diego. As he did, Hero raised his head and cocked it to the side. His ears shot up. He sniffed at the air, and he stared upstream into the distance. Ben knew his dog's posture could only mean one thing. Hero was tuned into something they couldn't hear or see yet. The hair on Ben's arms stood on end. Jack had noticed it too, and so had Corey. Corey stood close to Ben. He turned his tear-stained face up to look at Ben right in the eye. "What is it?" Corey asked quietly, so the other boys couldn't hear. "I don't know," Ben said truthfully, but Hero senses something. "Hero, what is it, boy?" He didn't wait around for Ben to figure out the answer. He sprinted toward the remaining 4 boys who were spread out along the bank, waiting nervously for their turn to cross the river. He ran in circles around them, slowly pushing them into a tight cluster next to Ben. "He's hurting them," Jack said to Ben. "Yeah," Ben said, "but why?" The Boy Scouts' all their faces were suddenly tight with worry. Hero ran back and forth between them and the water's edge. He barked ferociously, repeating the movement and the sound over and over. Finally, it clicked. Ben knew what Hero was trying to tell them. "We're out of time," he whispered to Jack. "I don't know why, but we have to get out of here, and now." He turned to the kids. "Okay, boys," he said, evenly but firmly, trying to keep the fear he felt out of his voice. "We need to double time this, okay? That means we can't go one at a time anymore." Ben handed the end of the leash to Jack. "Jack, wrap that around their waists and thread it through their belt loops. It should be long enough." Jack nodded and got to work. The tether was just long enough to attach to the 4 boys. Ben and Jack were going to have to go across without any safety rope. Jack would go first with Scout in his arms, then the boys, then Ben. And Hero was going to have to go last. Ben studied Hero's body language. The dog was still poised for action, still gazing upstream. Ben listened carefully to the various sounds of the forest. Rain plinking on the ground. Just like right now it's raining, or sort of. Rain plinking on the ground. Creek water bubbling and sloshing. Leaves rustling in the trees. The Boy Scouts breathing heavily. At first he heard nothing out of the ordinary, but then, finally he picked up on a low hum, a steady whoosh. It was heading downstream toward them, and it was getting louder. Fast. What was it? "Let's go, guys," Ben said, his encouraging tone just barely masking the terror that was rising in him. Jack stepped onto the bridge and turned around to offer his hand to Will. Will put one shaky foot onto the wooden plank. Jack walked backward, with Noah coaching him from the other side. The boys on the far bank watched them silently, their eyes big and round with worry. Diego stepped up next, then Nicholas and Corey. The boys shuffled nervously across the wood, dipping a few inches into the water under their weight. They slipped and started to stumble, but Jack steadied them. "You're doing great, guys," Ben urged them on from his spot next to Hero. The sound was getting louder. They had to hurry. The group was halfway across the bridge when Ben heard Corey crying. The boy had frozen in his tracks, too scared to go any farther. "You got this, Corey," Ben shouted. "You're almost there. Just a few more feet." "I'm scared," Corey let out a sob real loudly, and the boys next to him started to cry too, their shoulders shaking. "Your dad needs you to keep moving, okay, Corey?" Ben begged him. "We have to get help so we can go back and get him, remember?" That did the trick. Corey still looked miserable, but he sucked in his breath and took one step, then another. The boys were moving again. Ben didn't have time to feel relief. Suddenly, he felt the first stinging sprays of something small and sharp hitting his face and head. It was like a sandstorm, but it wasn't sand. It was wet and dirty. He wiped his cheeks and looked at his hand. It was gritty mud, and it seemed to suddenly fill the air around them. Ben looked upstream, and that's when he saw it. It was a mudslide. An oozing, spreading, seething layer of mud gurgling straight down the creek, spilling over the banks on either side and picking up rocks and splintering tree branches as it moved. It was gaining in volume and strength and swallowing up the creek, making everything in its path simply disappear. The mud looked alive, and it was moving quickly, too quickly. They only had a few seconds left before it washed out the bridge entirely, taking the entire group with it. Go! Ben shouted at the boys and Jack. Go, 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 go! On the other end of the leash, Hero held his ground. He dug his paws into the mud and crouched as low as he could, steadying the boys. Ben stood next to him, holding on to the rope too. Come on, come on! Noah shouted. Finally, Jack, Scout, and the rest of the kids tumbled onto land. Noah quickly untied the leash from the tree and began detaching them from it. The kids scurried out of the path of the mudslide as quickly as they could. Ben, Hero, let's go, Jack shouted. Ben looked anxiously toward the mud. It was only a few feet away. They had to move. Now. Hero, go, Ben commanded. Hero and Ben leaped off the muddy bank at the same moment, landing halfway across the bridge. They raced to the other side, just in time. With incredible power, the wall of mud blasted into the bridge, ripping it from its posts and tossing it into the air. Within seconds, the bridge had disappeared under the sludge. Ben lay on the ground, catching his breath. He was shaking. Hero came over and licked the mud off Ben's face. Noah fell to the ground next to him and let out a loud, whew. You can say that again, Ben said. He wanted desperately to rest, but there was no time. He got to his feet. Everyone okay? He asked the Boy Scouts. 7 little heads nodded. Ben pulled his phone from his pocket. Still no reception. Noah checked his phone too. Nothing there either. We have to keep moving, Noah said. Ben nodded. He looked up at the tops of the trees for a moment, enjoying the feel of the solid ground beneath his feet. Today, he had already bested an alligator, a flood, and now a mudslide. What was the hurricane going to throw at them next? Whatever it was, they'd have to be ready for it. All right, I hope you enjoyed chapter 17. That was kind of an exciting spot there. I wasn't sure what was coming. I thought maybe another flood, like there was more water rushing and they had to get out of the way. But a mudslide can be super dangerous. All right, I might find a new spot for us to read the next chapter. Until then, goodbye.